Good morning. I pressed a wrong button this morning, so that's why I was a little bit late. But here's the Ribhu Gita, the Song of Ribhu, chapter 37. Abiding as the non-dual Brahman by the undivided supreme certitude. Nidaga, verse 1. I shall tell you now the definition of the most secret, the quintessence of all essences, the conclusion of all the Vedas. In the same manner as it was expounded by the Lord Ishvara, the embodiment of existence, consciousness, bliss, for the benefit of all kinds of jivas. Listen with a steady mind. 2. All is of the nature of the Supreme Brahman. There is nothing apart as all. Our real nature is indeed that non-dual Brahman. There's not a shred of doubt about this. I say this in the name of Shiva. Rare soul, therefore, attaining the indivisible, complete certitude that all is ever the undivided Supreme Brahman, and that am I, be always in bliss. 3. With the steadfast certitude that I am Brahman, cast aside the thought of the body and such. With the steadfast certitude that the world is Brahman, cast aside the thought that the world is real. If you are thus continuously certain that I am Brahman, and this world is Brahman, the delusion of the world, the Supreme, and myself will wilt away like the flower gripped in the hands of a sleeper. 4. Space and other elements exist not. The world exists not. The differentiation as the Lord, Ishvara, and the individual, the Jiva, exist not. I exist not, nor you, nor anyone else. Name exists not, nor does form exist. All is ever the mass of knowledge, the Supreme Brahman. If you are thus certain until you attain stable wisdom, the delusion of differences will disappear with the development of maturity of knowledge. 5. If you always flawlessly practice the certitude that the body exists not, the senses exist not, the beings exist not, ideas exist not, the mind exists not, the ego exists not, thought exists not, its root ignorance exists not. If the firm certitude of the Supreme Brahman is practiced faultlessly all the time, the manifold mind that differentiates will disappear, like darkness before the sun. 6. There is no wakefulness, no dream, no sleep, no fourth state to be sought, nothing of multiplicity, nothing as a collection of separates or as an integrated coalescence, and no world of parts at all. Attaining the certitude of the undivided Supreme, that all ever is Brahman, and thereby correcting all the misconceptions of the mind, abide as the exalted Supreme Brahman alone. 7. Whatever is seen in illusion as a part, on the substratum of all, the Supreme Brahman, is nothing but the substratum, the Supreme Brahman itself, and not a trace apart. Attaining such certitude by worthy inquiry in a process of negation, and thereby changing all the misconceptions of the mind, ever abide as the exalted Supreme Brahman alone. 8. What is conceived of as a separate duality. The inquiry into the undivided Supreme will remove this misconception. All that are of the nature of delusion, all that are completely unreal, all such appearances are of the nature of the partless Brahman. By such certitude of the undivided Supreme, undefiled by the idea of anything apart, abide as the non-dual Supreme Brahman alone. 9. The discrimination between the eternal and the ephemeral, the discrimination between the good and the bad, the discrimination between the devotee and the liberated one, the discrimination between the existent and the non-existent. All such manifold appearances are of the nature of the universal, blemishless Supreme Brahman. By such certitude of the changeless, undivided Absolute, abide as the non-dual Brahman alone. Various scriptures, such as the Vedas and others, the teacher Acharya, and the disciple, the Sisha, who study these, the idea of the body that is conceived as being myself, the idea of myself being of the nature of the seer, the Supreme Brahman, all such appearances of differences are of the nature of the differenceless Brahman. By such constant certitude of the undivided Brahman, abide as the exalted Supreme Brahman alone. 11. That I am ever the individual, Jiva, subject to bondage, that I am ever Brahman without bondage, that all this manifest world is real, that this wondrous world and such are unreal, all such perceptions are of the nature of the all-pervasive Brahman. By such exalted certitude of the undivided Absolute, abide as the undivided Absolute alone. 12. All the ideas that cloud the mind, such as the actions to be performed daily, the steadfast devotion, the endless contemplation of chosen gods, and the worship of the idols of such gods, are all of the nature of the exalted Brahman. By such profound certitude of the undivided Absolute, abide as the taintless Brahman alone. 13. The sense of possession, which thinks this is mine, the ego, which thinks all the time of I, the variegated things that are considered external, the several things that are considered internal, all appearances of such different categories are of the nature of Brahman without a second. By such profound certitude of the undivided oneness, abide as the taintless Brahman alone. 14. The pantet of great elements such as space and others, the pentad of categories such as speech and others, the endless variety of the world to which the experience is subject, the millions of galaxies in the cosmos. All such baseless appearances are of the nature of Brahman alone. By such undiminishing certitude of the undivided Brahman, abide as the non-dual supreme Brahman alone. 15. The pentad of revered groups of Brahma, the Creator, and the other gods. The pentad of activities such as creation and others. The gods, the sages, humans, and other groups distinguished as such. The variety of wandering animals, all such classes of appearances, are of the nature of the blemishless Brahman. By such firm certitude of the undivided Absolute, abide as the non-dual Supreme Brahman alone. 16. All such continuing appearances of duality, such as sacred streams, hallowed shrines, service to the shining gods therein, forests, mountains, oceans, rivers, and the variety of beings therein, are of the nature of the one blemishless Brahman alone. By such persistent certitude of the undivided Supreme Brahman, abide as the Supreme Brahman, without a second. 17. All projections that arise as in a picture, such as the decisive functioning of the intellect, the doubtful functioning of the mind, the eerie emanations of thought, the multiplicity of experiences, all these activities are of the nature of Brahman, of consciousness alone. By such clear certitude of the undivided Absolute, abide as the Supreme Brahman, the mass of bliss alone. 18. All these differentiated perceptions that arise, such as the body, the senses, the beings, the uncertain mind, the intellect, the ego, which arises, thought, and ignorance, that is the prime cause of all, are entirely of the nature of the differenceless Supreme Brahman. By such sorrowless certitude of the undivided Supreme Brahman, abide as Brahman, the mass of bliss alone. 19. All these conceptions that arise, such as delusion, ignorance, the individual being, Maheshvara, the distinction as the individuals and the Supreme, the variety of integral wholes or collection of separate things, this is high, this is low, and these are equal, are entirely of the nature of the Supreme Brahman, shining consciousness alone. By such committed certitude of the undivided Absolute, abide as the Supreme Brahman, the blemishless, alone. 20. The integral wholes and collection of separate things that are gross, the integral wholes and collection of separate things that are subtle, the integral wholes and collection of separate things that are the causal, the complete, the little, and the mixed. All such manifold appearances are only of the nature of Brahman, consciousness. By such intense certitude, abide as Brahman, which alone is the reality. 21. The cosmic experiencer of the waking state, who experiences the integral whole, the individual experiencer of the waking state, who experiences the discrete, the Lord and the beings, and the variety of their mutual bondages, the divisions as the world, individuals, and the supreme, are all unreal appearances. They are of the nature of the imperishable Brahman. By such auspicious certitude of the undivided Absolute, abide as Brahman, the changeless. 22. All such perceptions as this being the particularized direct meaning, and this being the impeccable indirect meaning, and this being the meaning of differenceless identity, and this being the indefinable, natural, supreme reality, are of the nature of the spotless Brahman. By such committed certitude of the undivided Absolute, abide as Brahman, the true awareness alone. '23. All such explanations as the natural meaning of words being the direct and the special meaning of words being the indicated, direct interpretations as expressed being the primary, and special interpretations as being the intended, are of the nature of Brahman. By such arising of certitude of the undivided Absolute, abide as Brahman, of the nature of awareness alone. 24. All the seemingly firm conclusions that identify, excuse me, all the seemingly firm conclusions that identity cannot be brought out by the discarded interpretation, that identity cannot be brought out by accepted interpretation, that the identity of the individual and the supreme will shine forth by one of these two interpretations, are all of the nature of the shining existence, the supreme Brahman. By such disciplined certitude of the undivided Absolute, abide as the supreme Brahman, full of consciousness alone. 25. The defectless, unconditioned nature can alone be the meaning of the great aphorism, and the differentiated, conditioned nature can never be the meaning of the great aphorisms. And all manifold appearances such as these are of the nature of the blemishless Brahman. By such clear certitude of the undivided Absolute, abide as Brahman, the actionless alone. 26. As all the crest of the Vedas proclaim that all is of the nature of the Supreme Brahman, and as all men of wisdom with knowledge of the Supreme Brahman also declare likewise, and because of the nature of the grace of Shiva already conferred on me, dispelling all darkness, there's not an atom of doubt in this explanation of the certitude of the undivided Absolute. This is definite. 27. Whatever is seen as a superimposition on the substratum, the Supreme Brahman, upon inquiry is found to be only the substratum itself, and not the form of the superimposition. It is only to those of profound meditation that this experience will result, and this experience will not occur at any time for those who are dominated by a hopping mind. 28. Hence, having the practice of one-pointed profound meditation always, that all the illusory appearances are indeed the Supreme Brahman, the substratum, and that defectless Brahman is myself, and I am that Supreme Brahman of bliss, and casting aside all the misapprehensions of the fickle mind, attain the knowledge of the undifferentiated, undivided Absolute, and abide as the Supreme Brahman, the partless, alone. 29. Great sage, it is only for those who abide as the Supreme Brahman, by means of the supreme undivided knowledge as aforesaid, that this disease of birth and death will disappear. It can never be destroyed for others. Hence, attaining undivided knowledge as aforesaid, and becoming thereby the undivided Supreme Brahman, efface all the fearsome sorrow of repetitious birth, and enjoy the differenceless joy of liberation. 30. As expounded by the blemishless Shiva, I have told you very firmly the definition of the undivided Absolute, that all is the undivided Brahman, and that Brahman, with nothing apart, is who you are. Those who have, with purity of heart and with all attention, even once listened to and understood this extremely secret interpretation without any doubt, shall attain the imperishable bliss of liberation. 31. The undifferentiated knowledge of Brahman will be revealed only to those good men and women who are devoted to Shiva and perform daily floral worship and other offerings to Shiva at the feet of the blemishless great Linga. Only those courageous men and women who have properly attained such knowledge of the Supreme Brahman will be released from relentless repetitious birth. Rare soul, there's not an atom of doubt about this. In the name of the undivided Supreme Shiva, what is said is true. 32. The all-knowing sage Sutta thus informed the assembled sages about the changeless supreme reality, the same that the omniscient Skanda told the honored and faultless Yajeshjiva, that in the manner early expounded by the Lord of the worlds, the supreme Ishvara, the sage Ribhu explained to Nidhaga the definition of the undivided Absolute, that all is Brahman, and we are that. 33. It is the infinite form of our God of gods in a state of faultless dance that proclaims, by the knowledge that there is nothing apart from Brahman, the differenceless, undivided nature, that all defective appearances are all the one perfectly full Absolute, and that we are that originless Absolute, we can abide as that. And that's the conclusion of chapter 37. It's a short chapter, so I'm going to continue with chapter 38. The greatness of this treatise. 1. With conclusive certitude I shall tell you about the greatness of this treatise, which is the essence of all varieties of treatises, the quintessence of all essences, the most secret, the extremely rare, in a manner you can appreciate without illusions. Always practice the teachings of this worthy treatise without fail, and with that as your goal. 2. I'm ever existence alone. I'm ever consciousness alone. I'm ever bliss alone. I'm ever the pure absolute. I'm ever the wholly complete. I'm ever the highest of the high. I'm ever the supreme Shiva. I'm ever Brahman. 3. Whatever exists is the supreme Brahman. There's no doubt of this. Whatever does not exist is the supreme Brahman. There's no doubt of this. All is the supreme Brahman. There's no doubt of this. You and I are the supreme Brahman. There is no doubt of this. Everything is the supreme Brahman. There's no doubt of this. The real and the unreal are the supreme Brahman. There is no doubt of this. The entirety is the supreme Brahman. There is no doubt of this. I am that supreme Brahman. There is no doubt of this. 4. All is of the nature of Brahman, existence alone, and not different from the self. Brahman indeed is the self. The self indeed is of the nature of the Supreme Brahman. There's not the least difference between the blemishless, all-pervasive self and the all-complete, perfectly full Brahman. Both are the same. In the name of Shiva, of the nature of awareness, what is said is the truth. 5. All names and forms are Brahman, and we are that Brahman. There's not the least doubt about this explanation. This is the truth. This is declared for the welfare of all. In the name of the great truth, Shiva, the all-pervasive, transcending all abodes, without the least doubt about this as yes or no, be of the steadfast certitude as aforesaid. 6. All the appearances, mobile and immobile, are of the nature of the Supreme Brahman, the reality. That immemorial nature is myself indeed. Attaining such certitude, and thereby removing all the misapprehensions, attaining the knowledge of the blemishless Absolute, and becoming of the nature of Brahman, changelessly abide in yourself. 7. This state of changeless abidance in yourself is the pure supreme liberation. Tossing like the wave without abiding in oneself alone is bondage. If looked into deeply, other than yourself, the one existence, there's not an iota of any cause for change. Hence you should ever abide in yourself, by yourself. 8. As the means of abiding in oneself by oneself is the attainment of certitude of the undifferentiated, undivided Absolute, and of all appearances arising as apart from oneself, as never being anything apart of the self, and the self is oneself, by holding fast to the certitude of the undivided Absolute as aforesaid, become the undifferentiated Absolute. 9. There is nothing apart from yourself, the self. It is certain that all is yourself, indeed. I am declaring this after investigating all the scriptures. This is the definite, supreme truth. Touching the feet of the exalted Shiva, I tell you, this is the undoubted certitude. Touching the feet of the Guru, I tell you, this is the certitude of the crest of the Vedas. 10. Holding a heated battle axe on my tongue, I asseverate this. There's no doubt in what I'm saying. This certitude of the undivided Absolute is the greatest acquisition of all knowers of truth. Pure One, therefore, attaining forever the certitude of the undifferentiated, undivided Absolute, and thereby becoming the Absolute itself, be always in unequaled bliss. 11. Changeless certitude is the unparalleled means for attaining the state of bliss. As you progress more and more in this exalted certitude, the duality of the world will disappear. If the appearance of despicable duality recedes, spotless bliss will spontaneously arise. Remain with this fearless certitude, attaining thereby this undivided, supreme bliss. 12. You are of the nature of the Supreme Brahman, all existence. You are of the nature of the Supreme Brahman, changeless. You are of the nature of the Supreme Brahman, consciousness. You are of the nature of the Supreme Brahman, consciousness, bliss. You are of the nature of the faultless Supreme Brahman. You are of the nature of the perfectly full Brahman. You indeed are of the nature of the Supreme Brahman, which is that alone. You indeed are of the nature of Brahman, which is unimpeded. 13. I have told you this great secret explanation as expounded to me by our Lord Ishvara. Revered sage, there is no doubt in what I've said. I repeat this thrice. This is the truth. Always assiduously practicing the certitude of the undivided Absolute with absolutely nothing apart, and becoming of the nature of the pure Brahman, abide in perfect bliss. 14. I have told you this definition, rare for even the gods, the sages, and yogis to know, graciously bestowed upon me as a gift of the sacred Supreme Shiva. Hence, always assiduously practicing the certitude of the undivided Absolute, and becoming of the nature of the sufferingless Supreme Brahman alone, abide in sorrowless bliss. 15. Nidaga, I have fearlessly communicated to you the knowledge of the Supreme Brahman, communicated earlier to me as a gift by the Lord of all the worlds on the spotless Mount Kailash, for the benefit of all beings. Be aware that it is rare in all the three worlds to obtain this knowledge. 16. Once the Lord Ishvara, ensconced facing the southern direction, as Dakshinamurti, Shiva, southward facing, symbol of silent wisdom and abidance, wise and formless, taught this sublime knowledge to the gods for 1,000 years, to strengthen their comprehension, to fortify this sublime knowledge. Ishvara, the Lord of all the worlds, taught it assiduously to the embodiment of grace, to Devi, the goddess, for a whole year. 17. Vinayaka, the son of Shiva, the remover of obstacles, taught this elaborately to his disciples for several years. Hari, Vishnu, the sustainer, graciously taught this to Brahma, the creator, for a long time in the ocean of milk and honey. Once I taught this defectless knowledge to my father in Brahmaloka. Once I explained this clearly and elaborately to Narada and other sages. 18. In compassion with you as the first and for the benefit of all the people of the world, I have truly expounded this treatise that so easily lays bare the knowledge of Brahman, as earlier communicated to me by the Lord Ishvara, without any abridgment or elaboration. Equal to this treatise, there is none anywhere. Blessed One, no other treatise will confer such unimpeded knowledge like this treatise with its special characteristics. Other great works will only by steps confer the knowledge of the undivided Absolute, but this honored treatise alone will quickly confer the knowledge of the differenceless Brahman. Because of this, there is no treatise equal to this anywhere. 20. There is nothing to equal a single foot of the poetry in this treatise. Can there be anything else anywhere to equal the other feet? What can compare with this teaching, which explains this matchless knowledge of the undivided Absolute? Therefore put into practice this wonderful treatise with total dedication. 21. The fruit carefully garnered by properly performing millions of fire sacrifices and bathing in millions of sacred streams cannot equal the fruit of studying even 1 foot of this poetry. Can we compare the fruit resulting from the giving of this gift to the entire world to the constant study of 2 feet of poetry in this treatise? 22. Gifts of all varieties will not equal the fruit of properly studying 3 feet of the amazing poetry in this wondrous rare treatise. There is nothing anywhere equal to study of 1 stanza with due attention. Is there anything to equal the good fortune of attaining the experience of this even once? 23. Even if not competent by nature to listen to and understand the substance of a treatise like this, if one even just daily read with sincerity this blemishless work, such a reader would also progressively attain undivided knowledge and thereby become liberated. This is the truth. Hence, casting aside everything, always take to the practice of what is expressed in this treatise. 24. Renouncing all charity and virtuous conduct, renouncing all sacred streams and shrines, renouncing all kinds of japa and tapas, renouncing all great mantra and tantra, renouncing all honored gods and all worship of gods, and renouncing all kinds of treatises, always take to the study of this treatise. 25. Cast aside all kinds of history, cast aside all kinds of action, cast aside all kinds of yoga, cast aside all kinds of philosophy, cast aside diverse varieties of devotion, cast aside all specialized approaches, and cast aside all kinds of works. Always take to the study of this treatise. 26. Cast aside all the varied religions, cast aside the variety of ideas, cast aside all manner of secret doctrines, cast aside the service to all, cast aside all kinds of holy acts, cast aside all good fortune, and cast aside all haunting doubts. Ever take to the study of this treatise. 27. Cast aside the legion of lessons. Cast aside all manner of habits. Cast aside the various worlds. Cast aside the peerless guru. Cast aside whatever is here and hereafter. Cast aside whatever is thought of as something else. And cast aside all debilitating doubts. Ever take to the study of this treatise. 28. This treatise is indeed the Supreme Brahman. Take to the study hereof with interest. What is the use of studying anything else? Is there any use of several lamps before the brilliance of the sun? If you always thoroughly study this one treatise, the result of any text can be attained by this alone. There's not a shred of doubt about this. 29. All distortions will be destroyed by this treatise. All failing will be peeled off by this treatise. Quiescence in consciousness will be realized by this treatise. The repose of thought will result by this treatise. Undivided supreme knowledge will ensue with this treatise. All ignorance will be dispelled by this treatise. The originless bondage of worldly existence will be obliterated by this treatise, and undivided supreme liberation will unfold with this treatise. 30. All duality will die out by this treatise. Pure non-duality will remain with this treatise. The knot of the heart will be set at naught by this treatise. The concept of life will find its culmination with this treatise. All the misery of mundane existence will melt away with this treatise. Supreme happiness will surge up by this treatise. All attachment will be annihilated by this treatise, and the abode supreme can be attained by this treatise. 31. If this treatise is regularly read at least once daily with dedicated discipline, even by one who is not equipped to study and ponder over and assimilate the meaning of this treatise, all the sins committed in endless existences will be eliminated in this birth. And attaining profound, undivided supreme knowledge, he or she will abide as the nature of the taintless supreme. 32. One who hears this even once in his lifetime will attain liberation. There is none in this world to equal one who reads this regularly every day. Hence, rare sage, casting aside the endless texts with no authority, all who have the urge for liberation should, without a day's discontinuance, take to the study of this spotless treatise. 33. Observe that this treatise is the essence of the ultimate conclusion of all scriptures. The differenceless treatise is the settled conclusion of all Vedas and Vedanta. This honored treatise is the final conclusion of all the sages imbued with perfectly full knowledge. This revered treatise is the fitting finale, graciously gifted to us by our Lord. 34. This is the most recondite of the recondite. This is the essence of any essence. This is the rarest of the rare. This is the most marvelous message. This is the dispeller of any doubt. This is the bestower of the changeless certitude. This is the destroyer of all debilitating duality. This is what converts the natural state, sahaja, Sage of great tapas, intense practice. What avails explanations in so many words? This is the treatise to turn to for aid. On the earth, in the heavens, anywhere, the extremely rare, true it is. This is the essence of various texts, such as the Vedas, the Upanishads, the scriptures, the epics, and others. There's not a tome in the world to equal this treatise. 36. Once, in days of yore, my father, with a doubt arising in his heart that none will get liberated by this text, secreted this by throwing it into the ocean of milk. Then coming to know of this, I immediately retrieved this, when it washed ashore on the ocean of milk, and my father was furiously enraged with me. 37. Departing from that world that day, I reached this wonderfully holy spot of Kedara, and today, moved by your devotion, I have now expounded this treatise for the benefit of all. Besides, there is no one in this wide world competent to understand the meaning of this treatise and to communicate it to a competent disciple. Is not this pure supreme knowledge rare indeed? "38. The undivided knowledge is rare to come by, so also is this treatise very rare. One who understands this rare treatise is indeed a rarity. One who graciously teaches this rare treatise is indeed also a rarity. One who listens attentively to this rare treatise is also a rarity indeed." 39. The blemishless disciple, competent to listen to this work, is rare. The Sadguru, the true Guru, to teach this beneficial text is also very rare. Those who have obtained this book, devoid of differences, are also rare. Because of these factors, this treatise has not achieved its proper renown. 40. This treatise, which has the power to completely remove all wavering and instill undividedness, will come within the reach of only that ultimate life with no more birth, fit to attain one's natural state, after the fruition of all the Dharma practiced in successive births, and removal of all sins to those, and removal of all sins. To those who reach this treatise, there is no more birth. This I say in the name of Maheshvara. 41. In days past, the Lord Ishvara, risen as a divine auspicious form, graciously taught me this text of such repute, for the benefit of all. In like manner, I have also, in a spirit of compassion, taught this to you, Nidaga. Whoever reaches this efficacious text will become of the nature of Brahman, consciousness alone. 42. I have said all that I have to say. Now I shall betake myself somewhere else. Hearing these profound words of the sage Ribhu, overcome with joy and with tears of happiness welling up in his eyes, his body in trepidation with overwhelming devotion, Nidaga prostrated himself with humility, and his voice choking in ecstasy, uttered the following. 43. Honored Guru, with a sublime knowledge beyond comprehension, by your compassion, small-minded I have overcome my littleness, and have grown to be the great, undivided, complete, perfect fullness, without separate identity. By obtaining this hard-to-get audience of yourself, I have obtained all there is to be obtained in this birth. By the rare relationship with your grace, I have become one who has successfully fulfilled all that is to be done. 44. My guide, of the words that you in your grace have bestowed, I have taken up for reflection one of the statements of certitude that you have uttered. Thoroughly effacing all attachment and holding fast to supreme bliss, I have become of the nature of Brahman. What shall I say of your compassion that has removed all my worldly sorrow and conferred undivided bliss? There's not an iota of doubt in what has been said. How shall I describe this greatness of yours, my revered master? 45. There is no recompense for this help of yours rendered in compassion. Supreme Guru, my humble self would offer endless variety of obeisances to your feet. But even obeisance is more of a courtesy than anything else. For is there any obeisance in the domain of the ultimate truth? All is Brahman in the ultimate truth, and no difference of any kind exists. 46. My good guide, in the revelation of the divine awareness, I have personally experienced by your compassion. There is neither I who am speaking, nor you, nor this treatise on which has been heaped such praise. No individual jivas affected by bondage, no Lord Ishvara, and none of the differentiated earth or other worlds. Revered Guru, all is the supreme Brahman of the undivided nature and nothing apart. 47. Great among Gurus, in the partless undivided supreme revelation, which I have obtained by your compassion, all is of the nature of the supreme Brahman, and there is nothing apart as all. There is no such talk of the manifold, of Brahma, the creator, and of all, as being separate entities. Nothing ever exists anywhere. All is only Brahman, of the nature of awareness. 48. The rapidly rising projection of I, the persistent projections of this before one, the pluralistic mode of the body and such, the witness mode of I am the witness, and the undivided mode of I, the one supreme. Without any of such modes or projections, the sorrowless, spotless nature of the supreme, the self-illumined, alone shines. 49. By your grace, with all manner of differences in my mind removed in a trice, I have reached the inexplicable, undivided natural state of my own nature. There is no doubt in what has been said, Supreme Guru. Praising thus with love, he, Nidaga, was happily and readily ensconced by himself in his natural state, Sahaj. 50. It is only for those who are blessed with the compassion of the great Shiva and the compassion of the Guru, who is the embodiment of that Shiva, that the perception of the appearance of the world, individuals, and the Supreme will disappear without a trace. and the indivisible, undivided supreme state result. What is spoken is the truth. Thus Sutta thoroughly explained the great truth expounded to Jaigishravya by Skanda. 51. It is the infinite form of our perfectly full Lord in a state of joyous dance that proclaims, there is nothing apart from the absolute reality, which is all complete. All is the all-complete supreme reality, and that you are, and that I am. This is the treatise of treatises, the essence of all. And that concludes chapter 39, I think. No, it was chapter 38. Have a beautiful day.